All right, Lauren, are
Does
you
that
in?
work? Yay!
Sorry, everybody, for all of our technical difficulties. We will reshare this in the Facebook group afterwards. If you've ever done a live, you know the technical difficulties that can happen. But we will dive right in. As a reminder, and for anybody who wasn't aware that this is going on, this is all about selecting a wedding venue, tips, tricks, and Q&A with Lauren from Lionsgate Event Center and myself from Knotted Events. I am a Colorado wedding consultant specializing in consultant-based rather than in-person planning. And Lauren here is the Director of Sales and Marketing at Lionsgate. Lauren, why don't you say a few words about
So
yourself?
actually how we met, I guess I'll start with that, is I was a tiny baby receptionist at Lionsgate when Jess and I met when she was working here, when she actually had my position before this. And then once she left, I took over. And now we're just collaborating together on this. But Lionsgate 2, family-owned business, 32 years they've done something right. So we'd love to share a little bit of both of our insights because I know now that you've branched off, you have some other things too. But other than me, though, I've been here for about 7 years. So I know it makes
Wow,
me
I
feel really
can't believe it
old,
has
but
been
it'll
that
be
long.
okay.
Like,
I know.
it makes you feel old.
Like I will not age myself, but it's okay.
Well, the reason that we are hopping on to do this live, and I speak from the western slope of Colorado for any of you who aren't aware, is there is a lot of miseducation coming from vendors all over Colorado these days. I'm noticing more and more vendors or venues that don't provide any education whatsoever for the couples or are flat out lying about what's possible at their venue, whether it's the hard nose, what's included, what's not included. I mean, their job as a salesperson, usually, not when you're Lauren, is to sell. And when you're selling, there tends to be, some miscommunication, we will call it, actually just downright lies from some people. In particular regarding budget. And so the reason we're having this conversation is to shed some light on how you should approach trying to find the right venue and your tour in general. So, Lauren, my first question for you is for any couples who are looking to find their wedding venue, whether it's for
Mhm.
2023, and guys, you got to get on this, or looking early for 2024, even 2025, how do you prep to go to a venue tour? What are some of the things that you should consider? How should you present yourself? All of that.
So I would say first sitting down with your fiance and getting to know what both of your wants and needs are is super important to make sure both of you are on the same page. Like, do you want indoor or outdoor ceremony, outdoor reception? Do you want, a mountain venue in Colorado is a big one. How many guests do you have? I would say compiling a guest list is one that I do see most often with my couples, but some that don't come in, with a guest list, it's really hard to get kind of anything else narrowed down. So I would say those are the big things, location. Is it more important to be closer to the airport? Is it less important? Like things like that. If you do have a lot of out of state guests. Or, is it the whole point that you're here to get away and you don't live in state or something like that? So I'd kind of get your priorities straight in that sense. And then as for like when you're actually visiting venues, I would kind of narrow that down to like five. I'm sure too, doing tours here, I'm sure it gets really overwhelming on the other side, meeting with so many different people. So I feel like using that list to then narrow it down to a select few of like five. I wouldn't really go any more than that. That way you're not looking at too many, getting yourself confused, that kind of thing. But I think those things would help you narrow that down.
Okay. What would you say are the aspects that you should be
I
narrowing
would
it down to
say
five
budget
on?
is a big one. Budget's super important. I know that we have some flexibility and some people don't. So it is really good to get that narrowed down before you start reaching out to folks for pricing, just so you do know, this isn't going to fit or it is going to fit, because you don't want to go look at something that you either can't afford. It's just not going to work out. So you don't want to like stretch yourself too thin. I would also say, guest count is a big one. There's a lot of places that don't fit a large guest count. So if you do have even 150, I feel like, and more, you should definitely get that narrowed down so that you can look at the venues that do seat over 150 or something like that. So I think those are the two biggest ones.
Oh,
Oh, did it work?
okay.
Oh,
Yep,
okay,
you glitched out for a second, but more technical difficulties. No, I think all of that makes sense. It's hard to ask you these
yes.
questions when I know the answers, but I also know what couples are really needing to know here. So that kind of are the things that you need to decide before you can reach out to vendors, and then narrowing it down to the 5 before you go in tour. Beyond that, what are some of the questions you should be asking vendors who maybe don't have all of their information, venues who don't have all of their information on their website? Maybe they don't have max capacity, things
I
like
would
that.
definitely reach out if at all possible before the tour. Get a hold of somebody. I always feel like for me, my sister is actually engaged, and we kind of dealt with this on the other side of things too. So I can kind of see now how difficult that is sometimes. But I think reaching out, and whatever your experience is from the beginning is what your experience is going to be throughout the entire process. So if, reaching out to them is easy, they get back to you super easy, then that's a really good sign. So I would start there. And if, you can get pricing from them, I would do that. Kind of get that stuff narrowed down, because just like, you don't want to waste your time, they don't really want to waste their time either. So like, at least here we're looking for someone who's a good fit on all aspects. So I'd start there. And then once it gets to like, you are able to schedule a tour, I would kind of use like a week and kind of compile all of the questions that you might have. When you do go into a tour, I would maybe wait till the end to ask those questions. But if those questions aren't able to be answered in the tour, that's like maybe not a good sign. But that way, at least when you do go into the tour, if they don't have a pamphlet that has a lot of information on it, or they're not going over that stuff with you, at least you have it on deck of like, these are the things that I need to know.
Great advice. How would you say couples should come to a tour? Whether that's, should they dress professionally? Who should be there? All of that kind of thing.
I would kind of, I would say dress-wise, I would come to the tour like how you're going to be planning your wedding. If you want to kind of portray that, I know I'm a little less into the like dress wear and all that stuff, and I kind of just want everyone to kind of do it for me, like maybe you come like that. I would just come as who you are in that sense, because it's going to be very clear, like, are we going to fit, are we not? Because you want to be yourself during wedding process as well, and you want to be yourself day of too. So I'd kind of portray that. But as for like, whether you want to like, have those questions answered, that kind of thing, I would come with like, I know I went with my mom. Me and my sister went with my mom because she is the person who is paying for all the things. And I know for her, it's a little easier if she's hearing the information firsthand and not having to hear it out of one of our mouths. So I would say maybe whoever is going to be contributing, if there is a person, or if you want to keep it within you two, like you and fiance, because sometimes when family gets involved, I know there are a lot of opinions that get thrown around. So I would say whatever your comfort level is. But yeah, I would say it kind of eases a little bit of the back and forth if you're bringing the people who are actually going to be able to make decisions that day. So, maybe if grandma's not making the decisions, but she's in town, you want her to come and see it, like, absolutely. At least here we welcome anyone in a tour. But if you want to kind of mix the amount of opinions, because it does get a little overwhelming, I would kind of just bring those few core folks that are going to be involved.
Totally. I always would tell people that when you are trying to do anything in wedding planning, whether that's, talking to a wedding planner, a venue, present yourself as you. Like, don't show up wearing a blazer if that's not how you are in your day-to-day life, but you want to present yourself in the best version of you. Because if you're going to be working with these venues or vendors for a long period of time, you want them to kind of be in love with you, like, and really enjoy working with you. So showing up as like a normal, everyday version of yourself, but the best version is really the way to go. And then beyond that, totally agree with you about having all the decision makers in the room and nobody extra. It's like the same as wedding dress shopping. Like, the more opinions you have, the more clustered your mind is, and the more input and questions and like distractions really you're going to have, so they can't even be focusing to you as you're walking around.
I think it's also super important to come ready to receive a lot of information. I feel like it can be very overwhelming when you just, you got off work for just lunch and you're coming in and you just really need to get it done in like a small window of time. And it kind of makes it a not very enjoyable experience, which might affect your decision making. It also might affect how much information you're remembering as well. So I think coming and being ready to be a sponge and just like good to go, I think that's super important as well. But yeah, what you were saying too, I really like the like coming as you are, because at least in at Lionsgate, we kind of base, and I'm sure you remember, base your coordinator off of kind of the vibe that we got personality wise in your tour. So if you're kind of not being yourself, it's a little hard to get you with someone who is going to work super well with you. Mm-hmm.
Okay. This might be a conflicting answer for some. Would you recommend if somebody has kids or somebody who's going to be on the tour has kids that they
So
bring them along?
I personally say no. For me, it is I am like an information person. So when you come visit me, I'm like, you need to know this and this and this, and these are the prices, and this is what's included. And I know sometimes we love kids and we're super kid friendly, but it does get a little distracting because I know that at least if I were a mom, I would be trying to pay attention to my child or if they're doing something or so. And I appreciate that, but does get kind of hard, and it's almost kind of nixes the experience for you a little bit when you're maybe getting distracted, or maybe, fiance is getting distracted and things like that happen. So I would personally say no, but I still welcome kids coming into the tour. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. Good answer, Lauren. I have to share a memory of mine of kids were running around chasing the chickens at
Yeah.
Lionsgate. Lionsgate has a ton of chickens. And if you know anything about me, I am not a fan of birds in the slightest. So they're chasing them, whatever. I'm distracted by that. And one of the kids gets in the water fountain and is just like splashing around in the water. It
Yep.
was a
Yep.
total
I've
fiasco.
definitely
No
had
one
some
learned
like that as well.
anything.
So I understand. I'm like, I love you.
Don't be those don't be those people
Yes.
purely for your own enjoyment of the
Yes,
tour,
exactly.
not for vendors. What questions would you say couples should be asking during the tour versus afterwards when they're sitting down and kind of reviewing
So I would
contract
say
pricing, that
beforehand,
sort of
a
thing?
big one at least that I get and I think is a really good one is what kind of service fees are charged. I feel like all venues are different, but a lot of them have service fees, and a lot of them won't really go over that with you. And service fees can be a big chunk. Some of them will charge like 20% of the total, which if you're spending thousands of dollars is a lot. So I think asking that question during the tour is really important because that'll be, give or take if it's in your budget or not, because it is so high. I would also say, we kind of already went over this, but capacities. I also know that at least on a lot of our paperwork, the capacities are the max capacities. So I try to also tell people when they come in, the Dove House seats 150. We can make that happen if we need to, but it's not super comfortable. So also making sure that you're asking like, is that actually comfortable or not? What's your vendor policy is also a big one. Because, some places will charge if you're using outside vendors. Some places don't even allow it. Some people, you have to just get everything outsourced, like tables and chairs and everything. So I think that's a really good question to have on deck as well. I would say parking is a big one too. I know we don't charge for parking and you can park overnight, but I know a lot of places do. Especially the places in downtown Denver, a lot of them will sell their parking spaces during a big game or something like that where you have to pay extra for them. And so I would definitely ask those as well, more so in Denver. Is there plan B? Colorado is a super iffy place to be with weddings. Do they include the plan B? Is it like flipping a room, something like that? So I think those are the really big, good main ones. Maybe also, does the caterer have kitchen space? Is there a fee for that? That kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Great, great, great. Something that I've always told my clients when I worked at Lionsgate and then now, especially as a wedding planner, is to try and see the entire space, not as the bride and groom would
Mm-hmm.
see it, but as the wedding guest would. What restrooms are they using?
Mm-hmm.
Where are they going to have to get water? Where is the welcome space going to be versus their take-home gifts? Like the little things are the high touch zones that are really going to impact the guest. And I think whether you're touring at Lionsgate or touring up in the
Mm-hmm.
mountains someplace, look at all of those things. The restrooms are also a
Yep.
big giveaway for how
Mm-hmm.
clean the venue is. They might clean the entire interior space to prep for your tour, like the ballroom, your getting ready spaces, but the bathrooms usually
Yep.
get forgotten if they're doing like a spot clean. And so if that's getting forgotten when they're trying to sell you on the space, I guarantee it's going to get forgotten in September when they're busy
Absolutely.
and have back-to-back weddings. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Certainly something to think about there. Are there any red flags that you would watch out for
So
during a
actually, one of
tour that you
them
want to point
was the
out?
cleanliness. So you kind of hit on that. That is a huge red flag. If it's not,
Sorry.
especially at this time of the year, we do have a lot of things going on still, which is great, but we have a lot more time to do back end stuff, which means that our venue should be spotless. I would also hold other places up to that standard. If, like what you said, if it's not clean now, it's not going to be clean in busy season. I would also say check reviews. Reviews are a good sign. I would say maybe not certain spots. I would say Google is a really good spot to check reviews. That's at least, you know, if I ever send my couples anywhere, I'm like, Google is a great spot. You need to check reviews there, check our reviews, check everyone's reviews. Like it should be, you know, 4.5 or higher, I would say. Also, I would say once you do actually go in the tour, if it's like a, oh, this place is great, but like I would check how many buts you have, because sometimes, you know, it might seem great, but you might also be settling if there's too many buts. You should absolutely love where you're getting married. You should be able to see yourself getting married there. There shouldn't be a lot of buts. So.
Mm-hmm. Good advice. I think another red flag for me is, I mean, like you said earlier, when you're trying to communicate with a venue salesperson, if they can't communicate with you
Mm-hmm.
effectively and consistently, like that process probably isn't going to get better
Yes.
when they're not trying to sell you. Beyond that, like how easy that process is, like how easy it is to make a tour if they're on the internet. As a wedding planner, and I have not worked at Lionsgate for quite some time now, the number of wedding venues that don't even have a contract they can send electronically, they like cannot
Mm-hmm.
send it
That's
via
wild. I
email,
can't
Lauren.
imagine. Like I can't imagine doing my job without that. So.
Yeah, if you can only communicate with your venue in person or via the phone, and there's no other
Mm-hmm.
way of doing
Yeah.
business with them, to me that would be a red flag because your vendors have to
Mm-hmm.
communicate with that venue as well. And you might not need to talk to them until the wedding day. But if your wedding planner, caterer, whoever it might be, can't contact them to say, do you have a
Yeah.
dishwasher? There's a problem. And it's going to be a really tough planning process
Mm-hmm.
that honestly your vendors are going to struggle through. And that's time that they could be doing a
Yep.
better
I,
job for
I
you in
also
other
think
ways.
like on piggybacking off of that in the tour as well, if you go into the tour and, you know, maybe that person was late, the salesperson was late, or they're, you know, kind of just giving you a packet and telling you to go walk around. They're not really talking you through anything. Like that is also the experience that you are going to get through the whole planning process. So if that's something that you can live with, then great, but just know that that is going to be the entire time. So from the get-go of contacting them, I would say that reflects on them quite a bit. So.
Totally. In regards to reviews, what are some things that you would look for within those? Somebody mentioned here
Mm-hmm.
that some vendors can buy reviews, so be careful with that. What are some things that you would look for
So
there?
I honestly, I don't look at Wedding Wire or The Knot. I don't look at, you know, Yelp or any of those places because you can, like, even on our side, we can buy the, you know, most reviewed of The Knot, like 2020, like we can buy those awards. Those are things that you can purchase. We've seen ads on our side, you know, Facebook reviews, things like that too. So for me, I think Google is the most reliable out of the bunch. I don't know if you can purchase ads on Google. Or purchase reviews on Google. I've never experienced that before. So that's why I normally tell my couples go to Google. But what typically I would look for is I would look at some of the bad reviews. I would definitely see if that venue is responding. How are they responding? Because I know sometimes people can get super defensive, and it definitely seems like blame gets, you know, put on the couple, and that's not something that we here strive to do. We want everyone to feel heard. So I would definitely look and see how they are responding as well. But posts like, you know, it was exactly what I thought it was going to be. Or I like that a lot of our couples will post and they're saying like, you know, from the get-go, the tour was amazing. My planner was amazing. Like the day was amazing. I didn't have to worry about anything. So I feel like for us, our, which I know you helped come up with this slogan, is stress less, love more. So I like to look at that and say like, okay, does it look like all of their couples, like us as employees lived up to that? Does it look like they still felt that way at the end of it? So that's kind of what I would look for, is the folks who have gone through the whole process and like did the wedding there and did the whole thing there, and then actually got a good experience out of that.
Great. Something that I've actually just told somebody today was, when you're looking at somebody's reviews, especially when they have more than 50 Google reviews, look for reviews that have your same keywords. So if you're describing your wedding as laid back, look for somebody who says that your venue or whatever
Yeah.
vendor you're looking for is laid back. If you want your venue to be really polished, look for something that says something along the lines of that, and that's in their marketing as well. I know that in Lionsgate's website, you kind of have a mix of a lot of different keywords because you can play to any of those things. Some venues I've worked with, and actually this is the biggest giveaway, is the word rustic. If the word rustic is in like every paragraph, I would question what rustic means to that venue and maybe do a little bit more digging as well. Kind of along those same lines, I have noticed, and I think everybody is, I mean, privy to this information at this point, but we all post our highlight reels on Instagram, Facebook, their websites, whatever. But if you go into a tagged section of somebody's Instagram, you can see what it's really like. And you're going to see it from guests. You're going to see the non-edited version. You know, a photographer can make anything look good these days and edit out the problems with the venue. That's part of their job. So if you're only looking at the edited version, make sure that there's not something out there that you're missing for sure. I see mostly vendors in here right now, but we are about to join into a Q&A section. So if you have questions, please drop them in the comments and we'll do our best to answer all of those. Any other red flags, even from just like the website, that you think people
I would
should be
say
looking
honestly
out for?
the like modern feel of their website, not even more so modern, but I know some websites are really hard to navigate when they're a little bit older. So if they haven't, you know, taken the time to update that, if they haven't taken the time to update their Instagram, if they don't really have a social media presence, I know it's kind of hard. At least with our company, we've been here for, you know, 32 years now. So it's been a while. Our owners have kind of stepped out and are, you know, letting us run the whole show here. And our general manager is really great with, you know, technology and doing all that stuff. Love Alex. She does a really great job with that and always is trying to update stuff. And I think that's super important, at least for the folks right now that are getting married. Because I know me personally at my age, I go on there and if it's not easy for me to get a hold of somebody or, you know, find pricing or like do something like that, that I immediately am done. Or if their website maybe doesn't look like they take a lot of time and care in putting into that, then it kind of doesn't really in my brain feel worth it. So for us, we're always updating photos on there. We're always updating stuff on Instagram. We have like a whole team of social media people who's always trying to update that stuff just to make sure couples know, you know, we have a website presence, we have a social media presence, because in this day and age, you just can't not at this point. So that's, I would look at like validity and like how modern it is and how much they update that stuff.
Okay. Great. I just got a Facebook message with the question of, is there a general rule for how much, I guess, percentage-wise you should be spending on your venue?
Yeah.
I have a very conflicting answer here.
Super dependent. I think with us, it is a little bit more difficult because we do include full service planning, whereas Jess is a full service planner. And we do get a lot of couples that come in and already have someone that they've fallen in love with. And I think that's super great. I would say, you know, most of our couples spend less than a third on the venue. I would hope that they spend a little less than a third. It just gives you a little bit more like wiggle room with everything else. But it definitely kind of depends on how high your budget is, I would say, as to what that looks like. But I think that's a good math equation. What do you think?
Okay. heated about this question. I think my answer is that there's no like true rules about this stuff. And if anybody is watching from The Knot, Wedding Wire, or anything like that, shame on you for the information you provide. It is total garbage. And most of the budgeting information and like you should spend this percent on this that is on Pinterest or even from Rocky Mountain Bride.
It's so dependent on what's important to you, you know? Like, what do you care for?
And exactly. I really don't think that there's a hard and fast rule for this stuff. I do think a third, I mean, if you're spending a third of your budget on wedding venue,
I'm like, they need to include all the things and do all the things.
Yeah. I certainly think that it's never also comparing apples to apples. Like at Lionsgate, you include tables, chairs, plates, glassware, flatware, the coordinator, which is really just a planner, so much. And then another venue doesn't include all of those things. And so when you're trying to say, okay, $9,000 for X compared to Y, like they're not the same. Like you need to create a whole flow chart. And then also in that flow chart, the biggest question that you can't put in like a template is, can you picture yourself getting married there? And if that isn't factored into the equation, like, I don't know why you're touring wedding venues. Like you can do this at City Hall. So I don't think that there's a hard and fast rule except for like, don't go
like
crazy.
Don't be venue
you
broke
do need
is
to
what
be
we call
realistic.
it. Don't be venue broke on your, and then you can't get anything else. That's not the way. You're not going to be happy.
Exactly. Like your friends are not going to be happy if you don't supply food, period. But beyond that, like, you know, this is the one like really major guest experience thing. Venue defines so much of what your wedding is. There's really no and ifs or buts about that. Like if you are getting married at an Airbnb that supplies nothing versus somebody who supplies everything, like your planning experience is going to be totally different. Your day of, like so many things differ from the venue alone. And so I have totally spiraled away from the question, but essentially, no, there's no hard and fast rule for this stuff. Just don't be venue broke. And don't trust anyone on the internet who tells you otherwise. Slide into my DMs with hate messages. Somebody says, don't trust vendors that struggle with different party sizes. My florist was not prepared, even though she swore she would have no issues. It was a disaster. Ooh, I certainly think that this applies to venues, you know. Lauren, I'm going to out everybody here as venues. Whatever a venue says their max capacity is. So if it's 250 at the gatehouse, I still got this. Take 25 off of it. 25 is like non-Sardinia level. If you go over 225, I mean, it's tight. There's no way around it. And any venue out there, like you should be saying, this is our absolute max capacity. Yes, we can do it. It's fire code.
And that's every single time where I'm walking a couple around, it's like, hi, all of our paperwork says this. Like we can do that if that is the absolute end all be all that you need, but it is not going to be fun and it's not going to be comfortable. So I think that is a very important thing too. Same deal with like the florist or something like that. You need to be very honest about what that looks like.
Great. Vendors out there, any questions about Lionsgate or venues in particular or anything you want to point out? I'll give you a second.
Like I feel like
we've got all sorts of Lionsgate people on here.
See them all
Any questions? Any questions? Lauren, do you have any questions for me?
I guess more so on this experience of being a planner, because we just have the planners that work here and they don't work anywhere else. As a planner, venue-wise, is there anything that you specifically look for where you're like, this makes my job so much easier, or this makes my job so much harder?
Inclusions. I mean, that's an obvious one. I think at Lionsgate in particular, a very clear line of what if somebody is coming in with a planner, which I've actually done 2 weddings there as an outside planner under my own business name. And something that was really beneficial to me was having like a very clean line of this is what I'm going to do and this is what you're going to do as the planner. And I also just think templated information, and this goes for any vendor out there, like have all of your information, your same questions you're asked all the time, like where are the restrooms? How many outlets do you have? How many cocktail tables? Where can we do this? Where can't we do this? Having all of that stuff standardized and know like, okay, sometimes we do this and sometimes we do that. And like every time you get somebody on the phone or maybe a different person from the same venue, you get a different answer, makes things really, really difficult. Other than that, load in. You know, I work up in the mountains and I've worked at most of the ski resorts now, and load in is hard, really hard. If I have to load my emergency kit up a ski chair, like I'm not the most
that
thrilled.
is super fair. I would even just like doing the bridal shows, us loading in and loading out, it's like, you know, the venue itself, it's like, oh, this is going to be so difficult. So I absolutely understand that.
Yes. One last thing I do want to touch on, and I just kind of thought of this, is when people are reaching out to you at Lionsgate or any other vendor or venue, what information should they be providing from the get-go and what shouldn't they?
Like on a venue standpoint, what should we be providing or what should the couple be providing?
What
I would
should
say,
the couple be sending
honestly,
you?
the big things that maybe in your like inquiry that we need to know in order to get you narrowed down pricing is going to be, do you have a year that you're looking at? Because, you know, for us, sometimes booking this year, so 2023 versus booking 2024 is going to change pricing. If you're like season wise, are you looking at off season? So like some winter months, are you looking at peak season? So summer and fall. And then you have a day of the week.
I don't have an answer for that.
So are you looking at like a Monday or are you looking at a Friday or Saturday? What are you looking for there? Because that's going to change the price drastically. I think at least on our side, day of the week is the most change in pricing. And then I would say guest count too. Guest count super important. If, you know, you're asking for pricing, but your guest count is at 250, there's no reason for me to be quoting you the Duck House, which only fits 150. So I think those are like the big things, at least for us, that we need to know in order to get you the right information.
Great. I can't tell you how often I get inquiries. I think I got 5 today with just somebody's name, phone number, email address. For couples watching this, you are not doing yourself or vendors any favors by doing that, because then we have to ask you, what are we even talking about here? What year? Can you narrow it down to, you know, or for myself, what part of Colorado are we talking about? Colorado Springs? What? So really, the more information, the better. One thing I know as a wedding planner, I would never advise anybody putting in their inquiry email or even mentioning until they have received pricing from somebody is their budget. Because if you have a $20,000 budget versus a $100,000 budget, and I know, Lauren, you would never do this. You have your information in a brochure. But if a vendor does not have their information in a brochure or standardized to have provided you before you give them that information, they can change their pricing.
Absolutely.
Not good. The only situation I could see that being acceptable is if you know your planner is a percentage based versus a standard rate, then it's important for them to know your budget because they probably have a minimum. But even in that situation, you kind of want to hold your cards close. Play poker a little bit. This is big money we are playing with. All right. Any other questions, guys? I'm seeing cake cutting gets left out all the time. Definitely ask your venue or caterer if they charge a cake cutting fee. And if so, what that is. Get everything in writing. Mud season in mountain venues. I'm not sure what your question is there, Jenny. I would say mud season in mountain venues is cheaper, usually. And if
Yeah.
it's not, don't book mud season. Um, okay. If we don't have any other questions, I think that's all for this evening. Thank you all so much for joining us. If you want to comment below or message either of us with your email addresses, we will be sharing all of the tips and tricks that we talked about today, as well as just general questions that you should be going through with your venues during and after your tours. It's great to have something to reference back to say, oh my gosh, I forgot to ask about cake cutting fee or whatever it may be. And we've created a nice little template that you can bring with you, print it off, whatever it may be.
Nope. I think
Lauren, anything else?
answered quite a few questions. It also got me thinking on some stuff too, so which is always the way, but I appreciate it.
Perfect. Well, thank you everybody for bearing with us on our technical slash
I
my
wasn't very
technical
helpful.
difficulties.
I was like, we have a social media team. I don't
We
know.
can only do so.
Yeah.
Alex,
Like,
where
I'm
were
in her
you?
office right now, but she went home.
For anybody that didn't make it on, if you all know them, I can send the recording of this to you. Again, so sorry. Send us your questions. If they weren't answered, we will definitely answer them later. Have a good night,
Bye.
everybody. Thanks, Lauren.